Good morning. I'm leading with that because it's a good morning. I don't know why. I just feel like it's a good morning, and I have almost never said good morning in my entire life. You could ask my friends. Almost nobody has ever heard me say that. Why is it a good morning? Let me share this. Oswego State. That's where I went to college. I graduated from there 40 years ago. I woke up with that in my mind. I graduated from college 40 years ago. Earlier in the month, but there's been so many things going on that it never occurred to me until this morning, and that's the first thing that popped into my mind. You graduated 40 years ago. Wow. I mean, 40 years ago is twice, well, it's twice being 20. I don't know why that meant anything to me. It just did, but wow, 40 years ago. And we didn't get any notice this year. Last year you got it, but you got it in February before the pandemic shut everything down. They always had something about the reunion years. And they, would invite everyone from like the 10-year period. So, for instance, last year it was people from, 1970, 1980, 1990, whatever, and going back further. So that's what this year would have been, but nothing. Didn't get anything in the mail recognizing us. I mean, I got the alumni newsletter, but that was like months ago also. And I didn't read the whole thing, I'll admit. I always go to the certain section where it mentions people who graduated around the same time you did and says what they're doing, and there was nobody I recognized from any of that. So, But it's an interesting thing that I graduated 40 years ago. I usually remember numbers, but this time I don't remember the date. I remember that it was May. That's all I remember. This is a shame, but this is true. I don't remember almost anything from the day I graduated college. I remembered one thing. That's waking up with my girlfriend and seeing the only sunrise I ever saw in 4 years of college. Isn't that a shame? But, we concentrated on sunsets because Oswego State had some of the most beautiful sunsets in the world because of Lake Ontario. So we concentrated on that. I never thought about waking up early. I was not an early guy. I did that my freshman year, the first semester where all my classes, every day my classes started at 8. And after that first year, I said, nah, that ain't happening again. That was the best part of graduating from high school, is not having to be at school that early. But I never saw a sunset except for that day. And it's the only thing I remember. I don't remember getting dressed for it. I don't remember walking across the stage. I don't even remember where we were. I do now, but that's a different story. But at the time, I didn't remember that. I did not remember that my parents were there, although it made sense my parents would be there. I didn't remember I had other relatives who came to see me graduate. That didn't happen until around 1994. I'm visiting my parents in the Rochester area, and there was a dresser over in the corner in the basement. It was my old dresser that whenever we were moving around, that was my dresser. It was smaller because I was smaller. But, of course, as we moved around, later on, the last place we lived in when my dad retired, I had, bigger furniture because now I was a bigger person. But still, that was my old dresser. And I go through the dresser just, for memories, and I come across this film. Because back then, we used film. There was no digital cameras. Everything was film. And it was all this film kind of laying in the bottom of a drawer. I say, hey, Dad, what's this film? He says, I don't know. It's probably from some vacation. I said, I'm going to have it developed. Had the stuff developed. It was my graduation day of all things. And there was Mom and Dad. The only picture of the three of us from the day I graduated college. Had some of my other relatives who were there that I did not remember any of those folks being there. My grandmother was there. My Aunt Lucy was there. Turns out my cousin Gail was there. Oh, who else was in that picture? Like I said, I did not remember that anyone came for the graduation. I don't even remember the cake. I almost always remember cake, and I don't remember that either. That's just so wild. I don't remember anything about that day. Of course, I don't remember anything about the day I graduated high school except that I was at someone's house. I have no idea whose house it was. It was someone, he wasn't a friend, but I must have, been with some other people. We ended up there. and I saw my first lava lamp, and I sat there staring at it, trying to calculate how it worked. That shows the kind of weird kid I was. But, you know, it's one of those kind of things where I think back on college fondly. A lot of people don't think about stuff like that at all, but I think back on it fondly. My first year was murder. Did not like the first year at all. But after that, I remember the other years went really well. I met a lot of nice people over the time period I was there. A lot of people from downstate New York. And I met my first Jewish people because I didn't know what Jewish was until I was in college. I'd heard the term maybe, once, in real life. And of course in the Ten Commandments, but I didn't know what that was. No one ever took time to explain it to me. I never looked it up. We didn't have internet back then. And it wasn't in any of my encyclopedias. At least I don't think it was. I don't ever remember that. Had World War II and stuff, but I don't remember anything about, talking about Jews. That was actually interesting. In high school, when they talked about World War II, they never talked about Jewish people. So I never knew about the Holocaust. It just wasn't brought up. That's a shame. I don't know if it's taught now, but back then it wasn't. But I had a pretty good, 4-year run. I started out majoring in communications because I was going to be a sports announcer. Yeah, that didn't work out. After the first semester where I took almost all these classes on communications, I said, no, I don't care about broadcast law. I don't care about these different acts. No. I had no idea. I had no fun. That's not what I thought it was going to be. Truthfully, we didn't have ESPN yet. So all I really knew about it was the guy doing the sports on the news at night. Nah, didn't want to do that. So I ended up becoming a music major, and that just kind of changed my life because I met some really interesting people. People I don't think I would have ever met in my life had I done anything else. And by that, I'm talking like actor people, artist people, musical people. There were some super talented people. There were a lot of people who weren't all that talented. And I put myself in that group because all I wanted to do was write music. I didn't really want to be a performer. I just wanted to write. And I wanted to learn how to compose music. And still, it was interesting being with these people and then going to the shows and seeing how some of these people transformed into something else. And you're like, wow, that's fantastic. But I remembered that. I remember that my senior year, I did something I don't think I know anyone else who ever did this. I went to all my teachers, both semesters, the first week, and I asked every single one of them, okay, are there papers that are going to be due in this class? And if so, I'd like to know what they all are right now, or the next time I come in here, I want to know all the papers that are going to be, due for this year. And all the teachers that had papers told me what the papers were going to be about, that they were going to ask about. And I wrote all my papers, both semesters, in the first month, and I turned them all in. And luckily for me, Dad worked at Xerox. So I was able to get copies of all the papers that I did so that if a teacher lost a paper, which didn't happen, thank goodness, but if a teacher lost a paper, I had backups for everything. And the teachers were just all shocked. Why are you doing all this now? And I said, because it's senior year, and I don't want to get bogged down near the end of the semester, worried about trying to get all this stuff done. I know I'm going to have to do some studying, but papers are a different thing because papers take longer. I do better on papers, but it just takes away. Now, I was never a big studier for the most part. I kind of memorized stuff in general that I heard. I read the books, and so I memorized enough, and, I listened in classes. I actually enjoyed all my classes my senior year. That was kind of cool. And I made the dean's list my senior year, both semesters, which didn't happen the other semesters. Every year I got better, which was kind of cool. And it turns out, truthfully, that I did better with book learning than, music isn't necessarily a book learning thing. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I stuck with it because, like I said, I had a goal. But it's one of those kind of things where you're subject to a teacher's whim. I had my teacher my sophomore year who kept telling me in the early composition class, well, Bach wouldn't have done it that way. I'm like, yeah, okay, Bach wouldn't have done it that way, but Beethoven would have done it that way. Mozart would have done it that way. Why are we based on Bach? I said the chord progressions still work, but it was subjective. You would answer certain questions on a test because they were subjective. It wasn't necessarily in the book written the way that they believed it should have been, but that's just how it was. I remember I had music history tests. Some people stayed in there 5 to 6 hours doing a music history test. Are you nuts? I think the longest I stayed was just over 2 hours. And the only reason I ended up staying that long is because every once in a while, in the first 2 hours, the teacher would stop everybody and say, okay, I'm going to play a segment of a song on the record player. We had record players back then. And I'm only going to play it for a minute. And then you have to write down everything you know about that song. And that's what she did. And so you had to go to the music lab all the time and listen to all these different records. And it was amazing because the only classical music I really knew, this is a shame, I knew Beethoven and I knew anything that was in a cartoon. That's just weird. That's just weird, but that's all it was. And I couldn't have told you who wrote any of the music in the cartoons. I just knew that, oh wait, I know what cartoon this is from. So, you know, it's a little different going to music classes when that's your major than everything else. Everything else, I could read, I could understand it, I could memorize it, and I could go in and get my traditional B. Isn't that a shame? But I got B's most of the time. But like I said, senior year, Dean's List both times. And, you know, that was not bad. But that's just how it was. I can't, you know, believe, as I sit here right now, it was 40 years ago. I had no real memory. And I'm mentioning this, not necessarily just for me, but I'm going to mention it to the rest of y'all. You know, there are times when something is going to be pinnacle in your life. It's just going to be a big deal. And sometimes we just kind of rush through it and just, you know, don't even think that, you know, this might be the last time this happens. Or after this, I'm never going to see these people, or I'm never going to see this place again. And it's nice to be able to kind of go back and have a memory of some of those things. Like I said, I don't remember high school. I don't remember college. I remember the day I got married. Sure, that's helped out, but still, I remember that was a very fun day. I, you know, really enjoyed that day. But I didn't remember the other days, and that's a shame. So if you're getting ready to graduate from something, or you're getting ready to hit a milestone, maybe you're going to do your first speaking engagement. I hope some of y'all at least are doing speaking engagements. But try to remember some of these things that happen. You know, try to remember the day that you got married, the day that you had your first child. I would have loved to have had that as a memory in my life, but no children. But I got to play with other people's kids, so that's not so bad. But try to remember those times where you achieved something big or almost achieved something big. Heck, I remember the day I almost threw a 300 game in the bowling league. Didn't quite get there, but I was close. I got 10 strikes in a row. That wasn't bad. And we needed all of them because we won the game. See, I do remember that. Isn't that weird? So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. It's a Sunday. It leads up to Memorial Day, which is tomorrow here in the United States. That's all I got. My name is Mitch Mitchell. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. And I had a good morning. You're probably never, ever going to hear that again. Y'all take care.